Yeah, I agree. I always say this. I always say set your lifestyle, your goals, your sexy goals as I call them, then convert them into the numbers, then convert it into properties, and then boom, boom, boom. This many
Absolutely.
buy-to-lets, this many HMOs.
Yeah.
So you've built a portfolio quite quickly and of high cash flowing assets. For people who, I don't know, are kind of on the fence of like, should I do HMO? Should I not? What advice would you have for them?
So HMOs are an interesting one for sure. They, without doubt, they give great cash flow compared to single lets, but they are a lot more labour intensive. They're not for us with our student lets, but I'm thinking more for professional HMOs and traditional HMOs. You are going to have more hassle. You are going to have more queries from tenants. You're going to have a higher turnaround of tenants within a year than you probably would have from a single let as well. So if you don't want the hassle, you need to find really good lettings agents, managing agents to do that. But obviously that there's a cost involved to that as well. So you just need to factor all of those things in. And I talk about the benefits of students because how easy they are to manage. We don't actually manage our properties either. We have lettings agents and we factor that into our costs as well and into our profits. And we still think it's worthwhile, to have it professionally managed.
Yeah. If it gives you more time, depends what you're in property for, right? Like time versus money. Someone else might want to manage it themselves, which I definitely wouldn't want to do. But yeah, maybe they would. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
before you mentioned you learned how to creatively finance things and really how to work with investors. So, all the deals, I guess, after the first one, have they all been investor funded? How are they funded and how did you make it happen?
So after the first one, we actually then remortgaged our own house as well. Simona and my wife, we bought our house back in 2013, I think, and we managed to add value to our own house, and there was huge capital growth in our area as well. So we had all this equity kind of sat in our house. So we thought, instead of selling the house, we were thinking of actually selling it and moving into rental accommodation in a flat just to free up that capital. But then we thought, no, let's not do that. Let's think about this properly. We can just refinance the property and just move that equity into a new property, into an investment property, which we can then generate much more income than the cost of remortgaging will be. So we had that capital at hand. And then the first property that I did in 2016, that was due to be remortgaged in 2018 as well. And we managed to get over 50 grand back out of that deal. So basically that was enough for 2 more purchases plus half a refurb as well. And then since then, we've just used all investor funds for the refurbs. We don't use any of our own funds for the refurb. We try and make our own funds work as hard as we can for deposits because it's just easier with lenders if you're able to use your own funds for deposits. And then with our bridging lenders, they're absolutely fine with us using investor funds on the refurb element. So that's what we've done. And by doing that, it actually enabled us to not tie up all of our cash in one go. We're able to, do simultaneous deals during the Mastermind year.
And when it comes to investors, obviously a very, very common question. I'll start off with one of them. How have you physically found these investors?
Yeah, so that's something that I found so challenging. That, as I say, that was one of the reasons I wanted to go on Mastermind, was to learn more about funding deals and working with other people. And that was a real mental block of mine. Is like, how do I go out and ask people for money? Like, that's what it felt like to me. But then people want to learn. People want to get involved in property. They might not have the knowledge that you have. They might not have the skill set, they might not have the time, and they want to learn. So something that we did, which proved to be quite popular at the time, was to do like an earn and learn, where people could invest in our refurbs and we'd pay them a fixed return. It was quite a low return, really. Like, they could have got it for more, but the real value in it for them was the fact that they could come and visit our projects, see the refurb element, And I show them from start to finish exactly how we go about buying a property, adding value, refinancing it, and then I teach them about the valuation packs as well and how we're able to maximize the value. So so they get the benefit of all that knowledge and experience, plus they get their money back with interest. So it's actually a really good deal. It's cheap finance for us. We really enjoy kind of sharing the experience with other people as well. So it works really well there. And you asked physically, how do you go about it? So that's something I just stood up at PIN meetings and said said who I am, said this is what I do, and this is what I'm offering really. And you do meet people. People at property events want to be involved in property in some form or another, and the money's out there. And if you've got the deals, you just need to connect the two really.
Yeah, and I think what you kind of said was like, the earn and learn thing is exactly what I do as well, and it works fantastically. And I think, yeah, if you're just starting out, you're probably not going to get that many people sort of interested, especially if you don't have the knowledge and the experience and the kind of, hey, look what I've done. But it's definitely a combination of like the networking. Did you use social media at all to attract people?
I'm a bit of a Luddite, to be honest. Not like you, Tej, all over social media. I did on Facebook. I was kind of making it known that I'm doing property. So on Facebook, I'd put regular posts, and I do genuinely speak at property events as well, and I teach people, and so I do kind of promote myself to some extent on that. But I don't use social media that much really. It was just the fact that I was doing Mastermind, so I had a bit of credibility from there, and also that we'd actually completed some really successful projects as well, which helped on that respect. And I think when people see you putting your own money into the deal as well, and they're just paying for the refurb element, they know you've got the skin in the game as well, so they're not taking on all of the unnecessary risk. And another way we've been able to generate finance is through like SaaS pension schemes as well, which is it's good. There's a lot of money available, but it's not as straightforward as just borrowing money directly from an investor. You have to go through all this stuff in the background as well. So if you need money quickly, that's probably not the best route to go down, as we learned. But it's great, there's funds available. So now I don't worry too much. I know if we need funds specifically for a refurb as well, we'll be able to access that. It's not too big of a concern for us anymore.
And then on all these HMO deals, are you leaving some money in, or are you taking it all out? Or maybe talk me through one of the deals. It'd be interesting to know how it's like structured.
Yeah, so I'll talk you through. This was the second deal. This is just on the finance side, or how we found the deals, or a bit of everything?
Just the deal, so like purchase price, refurb,
revalue.
Okay.
So I'll talk you through one of the deals. So one of them was in an Article 4 area. We've managed to agree an exchange delayed completion with the owners, and we made sure the correct planning was in place between exchange and completion. We didn't have to actually complete until that was in place. So we bought it for £200,000. So we needed 50k for the deposit, which came all out of refinancing that first deal that we did. And then we needed about £9,000 in terms of legals and stamp duty. And then we spent another 45 on the refurb. And that refurb funds was, we managed to get all those refurb funds entirely from investor finance as well. So £200,000 purchase price, 45k refurb, plus some additional fees on top of that. And then we had that property revalued at 320, less than 4 months after purchasing it. So that was our quickest refinance, as it were, and probably most value gained in such a short amount of time. And that was with a commercial valuation. So the property was revalued at 290 on bricks and mortar and 320 as a commercial, and we took out the commercial valuation on it.
And so I'm guessing you do all en suites to then get that commercial as well?
No, We don't actually, interestingly. So we go very high end with our students, but we generally avoid en suites because our target market students, they're a group of sharers, like a group of friends sharing a property. So we try and put in as many shower rooms and bathrooms and stuff as we can, but we still want it to feel like a single dwelling. Mainly to give us multiple exit strategies if we ever sold the property. If you're only selling the property as a HMO, you know, who knows what will happen to the HMO market 20 years down the line. But we could easily resell that property back to a family if we wanted to. But because the property was in an Article 4 area, we were actually able to get the commercial valuation. The commercial valuation is basically if the property's been through some planning gain, you're more likely to get a commercial valuation. So Article 4 or sui generis.
And then how is a commercial valuation worked out? Is there a sort of rule of thumb that people can listen to this and work out, or?
Yeah, so it's gross rent. So that property generates about £40,000 of gross rent in a year. And then you have to minus for costs, and it's anywhere between 20 to 25% usually. They take off for voids, management, maintenance. So they will deduct 25% off the gross rent, and that gives you what's called a net adjusted rent, and you divide that by the yield for the area, and that's comparable yield. So if you look at what other HMOs have sold for in the area, so say they sell for like a 7% yield, that would then be the yield for your area. And in the Midlands, it's kind of common that they use like around a 9% yield. We've managed to get that lower. The lower the yield, interestingly, that they use, the higher your valuation goes up. It's kind of the opposite to how people would think.
So if you have a good HMO in a crap area for HMO sales,
they'll
better.
No. So the yield is used to stop a property in Liverpool generating £40,000 being valued the same as property in London that's being valued at £40,000. So that's one of the tools that valuers can use to adjust the end valuation. And in expensive areas, they tend to be lower yielding areas. So that's why when you're getting your HMO revalued, you actually want the comparable yields to be relatively low. So you want to look for HMOs that have sold for a higher price than you'd be willing to pay, basically, for your comparable data. And there are always landlords and investors that overpay for properties, luckily. So it's annoying when you're trying to buy properties and people are outbidding you and stuff. But actually, when it comes to revaluing it, it's very useful for the commercial valuations.
Interesting. And of course, speaking of revalues, this is the showstopper you're going to share with us. Putting all the pressure on you now.
World's longest segue to this.
Yeah. You know, revaluations on buy-to-lets are difficult. You know, that's what I do. And, you know, you can do the pack, you can do this, but there comes a point where it's like they're either just dicks as surveyors, they're incompetent, or you know, they're competent and you haven't done your research, which happens.
It does, yeah. So I do a lot of research before we buy the property.
Mm-hmm.
But the valuer packs are essentially, if people don't know what a valuer pack is, say you've bought a property and you need to have made some improvements if you want to quickly refinance a property at much higher value. If you've not made any improvements, a valuer is going to be very reluctant to value it much higher. But if you have genuinely provide an uplift to the property, you can get these huge uplifts in valuations in a very short amount of time. And so what I do is I do these very detailed, my value packs are about 80 pages long. So very
80?
80, yeah. So very, very detailed.
That's like a book. That's like an ebook. That's okay. Yeah, so, I'm really
interesting you say ebook. I do send them as a digital copy in advance. I don't even print out physical copies anymore.
Oh, good.
It's digital copy, because if you try and give that to a valuer on the day, they're not going to look at it. And it's broken into 6 components. So the first thing you need to do, the first component, is to prove that the property is in an area of strong rental demand, especially for HMOs, because HMOs don't work that well everywhere. Not like family houses. For HMOs, it needs to be in a really strong area. So for us, we're doing student houses, which are suitable to professionals as well. So we just need to prove there's the demand there. So you talk a bit about how close it is to the campus, or it might be to universities. There might be a teaching hospital nearby. There might be a city centre nearby. There might be major employers nearby. So you want to show how close it is to all of those areas. If it's in an Article 4 area and you've got the right planning to use it as a HMO, you really want to talk that up as well. Property might be in a conservation area, and that has a perceived value to it as well. So you just really talk up the location. And something that's important to point out, the value packs, all the information you put in them has to be accurate. Like, there's no bullshit in them. It's just pure stuff which is accurate, but it's showing it in the best possible light for your valuation. So you prove that the property is an area of strong rental demand. Second thing I do is I describe the uplift of the property. And I do that fairly concisely, to be honest. I try not to take more than a page describing the uplift, but I want to describe the really high ticket items. So if you've done a heavy refurb where you might put in en-suites, new kitchens, shower rooms, rewire, replastering, renewing central heating, new boilers, all those kinds of stuff are really heavy ticket items. If you've added any floor space, which is one of the things we like to do, we like to maximize the floor space. So we'll either do a rear extension, go into the loft, all those kinds of stuff. You really want to hammer that point home as well, that you've added the floor space as well. So you describe the uplift, talk about all the high ticket items. So we're only a few pages into this value pack. We've still got a long way to go. Something I forgot to mention, actually, when you're talking about the location, is you can include maps as well. So if you are close to a city centre, it's worth putting a map of your property, and you can see just how close, like Leicester is in my example. Or if you're in an Article 4 area, it's worth bringing up a photo from the council's website of the Article 4 area, just to show that as well. So the third element are before and after floor plans. And because we do quite heavy refurbs now, we have to have building regs drawings. So we have proper architects drawings. We have architects drawings of the before, and then we have like the proposed plans as well. And then we have all the building regs drawings, and they look really juicy. Like, they look great, and they are genuinely building regs drawings. So it's good to have those in. But the fact is, if you put that in, it looks so much more than somebody who's just maybe repainted the walls and changed the carpets. It just looks more professional. It's a lot more detailed. So definitely, if you've done anything substantial like that, you want before and after floor plans. Fourth element, and this is where it does start to get a bit long-winded, the schedules of work. So those first three parts, you try and keep relatively concise, really, because you want the valuer to read through exactly what you've provided and to look at everything. The rest of the valuer pack, it doesn't matter if they read through every single section. The fact is, you're providing the information. The fourth part are the schedules of work. And my schedules of work are very detailed. So for like a 5 or 6 bed HMO conversion, my schedules of work are about 10, 11 pages long, like literally line by line, everything you've done. And if you think through it, like even in one room, everything you've done, from changing the skirting, changing light switches, plug sockets, flooring, replastering, repainting, you go through it, and all of a sudden you've got this huge list. You do that for every single section of the house, and all of a sudden you've got this really detailed schedule of works. And the reason I do that is, A, the valuer can see exactly what's been done to every part of the house, but also it's just page after page after page of works and improvements that you've made to the house. So you're really helping to justify that huge uplift that you're asking for. That's the whole purpose of Value Pack. You're trying to justify this big uplift. So that's kind of the main bits of the Value Pack. But then here's the long section, which are your before and after photos. And I put tons and tons of before and after photos. And I have before, during, and after photos as well. So before photos you want to put in there, and then the during photos are when the property is kind of back to brick or it's in a really distressed type of state. And then the after photos, you want these beautiful professional images in there. And you can just, such a visual image to see the huge uplift in each room of the property. So I do that for the entire refurb, and I prioritize it with the heavy stuff. Like if I've done a loft conversion, I'll put those photos in first, and the bedrooms that have maybe had less done, I'll put in towards the end. And all of a sudden, you've got just pages and pages of detail for the valuer to look through. But there's actually only a few pages where you want them to read line by line. And that's why you want to keep those first few pages quite concise. And then the sixth element is, so we haven't even talked any numbers here, and you can already see how you've managed to prove that uplift to the valuer.
Yeah.
But the sixth element is the juicy one, and that's the comparable data. And that's the really important one. And for a bricks and mortar reval, which most HMOs would be honest, with like most normal HMO lenders only ever give bricks and mortar. The important factor there is price per square meter and price per square foot as well. And just for listeners, you can get that quite easily from the EPC register. You know, you find properties on Net House Prices or Rightmove, just properties that have sold, or Land Registry, properties that have sold nearby. You can search those property addresses on the EPC register, pull up the floor space, and all of a sudden you've got a list of properties that have sold by price per square meter. And you want to try and find the most favourable ones that have sold. So, and then the price that you're trying to get it revalued at kind of needs to sit in line with those properties. You're unlikely, if the average price sold in your area is £2,000 per square meter, you're unlikely to get your property revalued on a bricks and mortar basis at £2,500 per square meter. Like, it's just a reality check for you as well.
Yeah.
But that's what I do with those. And then in terms of commercial valuations, I go into a lot more detail with yields and net adjustments, and net adjusted yields and all these kinds of stuff. But also include rental comparables as well. So we achieve a premium on our properties, but it's all well and good you achieving a premium, but you don't want to be the only dog in town achieving those premiums. So we find other providers that are doing similar stuff that are also achieving these similar rental values, and we put those in as the comparables as well, just so that the valuer knows that it is in line with other suppliers, and it's more sustainable as well than if you were the only person doing it.
There's more though,
value packs. Well, that's it in essence to the value of packs.
80.
So yeah, you can go through this in a lot of detail, but that's kind of the gist of it.
How have you ever been undervalued?
No, we sometimes ask for more than we're hoping for.
Yeah.
And then it gives the valuer a bit of leeway to chip us back. But no, we've generally, even on our last two, which were kind of during the coronavirus, just before the lockdown, but during the coronavirus uncertainty, we thought we might get chipped slightly, but no, we didn't get chipped at all. In fact, higher valuations than we were even hoping for. So,
and when the surveyor then meets you on site after you've sent them the 80 pages, do they ever be like, mate, thanks for that pack? Or are they like, I loved that? Like, do they ever comment on it?
Yeah, so the commercial valuers really like that. They actually want you to send that kind of stuff because they have to provide like a commercial valuation report, which is very detailed. So they appreciate all the detail. Bricks and mortar valuers, they don't need to provide much detail in their reports, but no, they do appreciate it. One thing to say is I never call it a valuation pack. When I send it, I call it like a project overview or an information overview. I like to call it a project overview generally. And it is just all stuff that you have done to the property. You've bought it. This is all the stuff that I've done to improve it. And here are some like other properties that have sold nearby and other properties that are renting out. You're just making their life so much easier. So, and the fact that you're emailing it to them as well means they're much more likely to accept it than if you're trying to force a physical copy on the day.
Yeah. And you know what I think, right? Even if you had a lazy surveyor who didn't necessarily read all of it, who skimmed it, whatever, I think it's quite a very subtle show of force. You're basically saying, look how much research I will do, so you better give me the valuation, because when I appeal, there's going to be 80 more pages. So do you want to be in the office till
true.
8?
It's true, right? in that respect. So I look at it as it's evidence-based. The value pack you're providing is evidence-based. So you're making it much, much harder for the valuer to rein the valuation back, because you're providing all the evidence that they need to give you that good valuation.
Exactly.
And also it's important that you're realistic as well with your end value. I mean, some people think that just because it's a HMO, all of a sudden they're getting 10 times gross rent, and it doesn't matter what the location, what standard of refurb, if it's article or not article, you need a bit of a reality check. And actually doing that price per square meter, price per square foot comparables before you actually buy it really helps to give you an idea of what the end valuation is likely to be. And then you can budget your refurb accordingly to get that kind of uplift as well.
100%. You have to do that. I get people messaging me saying, I've bought a house, blah, blah, blah. Can you, look at this figure? And I'm like, okay, cool. What's the end value? They're like, I'm like, what did you just buy? What? Like, how can you do that? So it's very rare, though. I get that very rarely, but it does make me like stop what I'm doing and be like, how are you going to do BRR like with this model? It doesn't make any sense.
You need to. It doesn't take that long, and we invest in a specific area, so all of our properties are quite close by. So I'm just constantly like updating my comparable data, removing stuff as they get older, and bringing in new stuff. So it's actually very beneficial to me anyway to have that, and it definitely helps. And there are a few other things I do. That's kind of the main gist of the pack. I have a specification schedule as well, which I've done recently, which is basically every single item that I buy in a property, where I source them from. Like it's quite detailed. I've got it down to how many millimeters my tile spaces are in between tiles and stuff.
Wow, you're very detail orientated.
Yeah,
wow.
I do like the details. So I didn't used to send that to the valuer, but I've actually got that as a supplementary document as well. So this is my schedule of works, this is everything I've done, and then this is the specifications of those works as well.
Wow.
I'm not expecting them to read that one.
Well, you might get a really geeky one who's interested, who's like,
yeah,
let me see what spaces.
But it shows that, just how much work is involved in a refurb. And I think even when you're doing it, you don't quite appreciate just how much, especially if you're trying to provide all the stuff for the house. Just there's so much like stuff you have to buy, so many things you have to look at. And then there are a few other things. I provide all my certificates, and actually those things I do print out and have on the day. So for HMOs, like you need HMO license if you've applied for it, or it's an HMO license application, emergency lighting certificate, fire certificate, Legionella risk assessment, EPC certificate, all those things that you need. I think I've missed a couple as well there, but all those certificates I have on the day. And also because we've had quite a few properties revalued in the last few months, so I've got numerous valuation reports as well. So I actually include those in my comparable tables as well. I include properties that have sold, but I also put in properties that we personally had revalued by RIC surveyors. So I put those in, and I just take those on the day as well, just as to provide a bit more evidence. So that's kind of all the information that I provide to valuers, and kind of in preparation for it as well. You want the house to be clean. So if it's fully tenanted with students, I do have a polite word with the students, just to say, we get on really well with our student groups as well. So I just say that it's really important. They'd really appreciate if you keep your rooms tidy. We'll send in the cleaner before the valuation anyway. You don't have to worry too much. If you just make sure things like your beds are made, And then I'll say I'll turn up maybe 20 minutes before the valuer, and I'll just go around, make sure all the blinds are open, all the lights are on. Just want the house to be presented nicely, like if you're trying to sell the house. You want it to be presented in its best light, really.
I agree. And I think I've had a valuation before where it was meant to be done and I turned up and I was like, fuck, this house is not done. I literally rolled my sleeve up and just had to start cleaning. I was like, to the builders, I was like, you lot are in fucking trouble. But firstly, hang the doors, sort the shit out.
Oh
I
my
literally
God,
got
so
their tools.
doors weren't even...
Doors were like their tools. I literally got their stuff and just threw it in the garden. I was like, listen, you lot can fucking deal with this shit. Like, I was like, and they were like, oh, we thought it was an agent valuation. I was like, I made it very clear this is life or death. This guy is like the god of my career. So you need to sort of, but fortunately I got overvalued, you could argue.
Oh, right. That's good then.
The guy was just like, look, I see it all the time. It was very weird, because I want the house to be like what you said, pristine, like you're selling it. But he walked around and it was as if he walked around with like fuzzy eyes. He didn't really look at anything. He didn't really comment on the decor because it was nice.
Yeah.
He just sort of looked, measured it, and basically did a square foot valuation. And he said, look, new kitchen, he just wasn't seeing, he wasn't interested. He was just seeing a house with 4 walls and a carpet.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you say that because they aren't looking at it from an aesthetic perspective as much. They're looking at it from any malfunctions in the property or any issues that they need to notify the mortgage lender about, who's their client, remember. We're not their client, the mortgage lender's their client. So they're looking at it from the lender's perspective. Mm-hmm. But I just don't like to leave anything to chance. So I would suggest to have your doors hung before valuation day.
I definitely recommend. I mean, I've actually had this twice, and once it was overvalued. The other time it was kind of, I think it was undervalued, but it was again square foot, spot on. Didn't comment on anything. So, but mine are buy-to-lets. So I think it does vary, but in your case, where like there are so many factors, and I would just never let this happen.
I just don't want to leave things to chance because we're trying to get the properties valued so much more than we bought them from in just like sometimes 3 months, 4 months. And, we're trying to get it valued 120 grand more than we bought it for. You've got to really earn that. It's not going to happen if you just leave it to chance, I would say. We'd like to go through all the detail and stuff. But you're right, you don't want to overwhelm with too much detail, which is why the bits of the valuer pack I really want them to read, I just keep it very, very, very concise. And the rest of it's just all the stuff that you've actually done. And it doesn't matter too much if the valuer reads it line by line or not. The fact is that they can just glance through it and see just how much work's been done to the property. And
absolutely.
If you can provide the comparables as well on top of that, you're home and dry.
Hopefully, if the surveyor's feeling happy that day. So we've reached almost the end of the podcasting. I think that's been very, very useful. But just before we leave, what are your goals for 2020? I mean, maybe they've been skewed by Corona, but what are your aims this year?
Yeah, so this year we're not actually looking to purchase anything at the moment. Not that we could, even if we wanted to, kind of in the middle of lockdown during this recording now. But we've got this big development of the 11 studio flats. And that's our kind of big goal, is to get that one complete before the next academic year, or before next year's academic year, I should say. So we've still got time on our hands for that one. But yeah, that's much bigger project than our normal HMO conversions. So we think that's going to take a bit more concentration, and the goal on that one is to make that the best quality student accommodation in Leicester. We'll be going up against all the purpose-built stuff on this one, but it's going to be bigger and nicer and better kitted out for the students as well inside the rooms. So we're just going to focus really hard on this one big project and really make sure we deliver it as we'd like to.
Amazing. And if people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to do it?
So the best thing is to visit the website, which is vogueabode.co.uk. So that's vogueabode.co.uk, and you can contact me through there.
I like that name. That's saucy.
Right,
Neil, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
My pleasure, Tej. Really great being with you. Thank you.